Welcome to Cast Blast Grill Chill, the podcast all about hunting, fishing, and having a good time. Joined by my cousin Trevor as always. How was your day today?
Shit show to say the least. Trainer a new guy at work, a little bit of all that before I start the new job. Um, yeah, man. But off season, we're in the beginning of August now. Thinking about the first of September opening a dove, ready to get out and get some practice in for duck season, and come home with some delicious popper material. So that'll be delicious. But my brain is already going about the whitetail season, man. Been daydreaming about it, thinking about going out to the national forest. Man, I'm yearning for those days of just sitting in the woods all day on the stand, thinking about hunting stand, looking at gear, all that stuff that comes with the off season.
Yeah, I'm definitely right there with you. I've been soaking up podcasts left and right, reading articles online, just anything
Absolutely.
I can right now. I'm itching for archery season to get here, but I'm also ready to go shoot some doves and get your good practice in for hitting those ducks because if you can hit a dove, you can hit a duck.
Yeah, man. So you're thinking about getting over to your local archery shop tomorrow and maybe getting some arrows made or what?
Yeah, I'm gonna go by there tomorrow and probably go pick me up a full dozen arrows. And then coming up on Saturday, Jake over there with Circle Star Firearms, he's having his grand opening because he's now Circle Star Firearms and Outdoors. He's carrying fishing stuff, archery stuff, Vortex optics, all kinds of real
Nice.
nice stuff.
So he's doing a little bit of everything then, huh?
Yeah, he's grown into. He's got a he used to work out of a metal building there on his land. He's got a dedicated shop now there just north of Anderson. So
Nice. Anybody local, go check it out. Grand opening on Saturday. This will be up before then, so I think it'll be up tomorrow, which is a Friday. So if you hear it, go check it out. Show the support.
yeah,
Shop
definitely.
local.
August 8th, there'll be free barbecue, and he's giving all kinds of giveaway. I saw a real nice backpack that he's getting ready to give away that's got all kinds of stuff in it. Plus, it's got a real nice set of Vortex optics, binos, and some other stuff stuffed in that bag. So
Nice, nice. Yeah, man, that's a good deal. I'm always a fan of free stuff and free gear. So, but yeah, dude, I've been thinking about getting out to the national forest before season. Public land is a fickle thing. So, I just had a camera stolen off of public land. My last trail camera. That's the second trail cam I've had stolen off of public land. So, I'm thinking I'm going far enough in, and so I'm not using like a cable lock or anything like that. But that doesn't mean if I did, that wouldn't have got stolen anyways. I was looking on the forums and stuff saying that they had it cable locked and a big padlock on it and all this stuff.
all they need is
And
a hatchet in 5 minutes, and they'll steal it. I mean, there's no accounting for
yeah,
thieves in East Texas.
yeah, man. And I was actually looking out at Central Texas here. Just a small little section. But dude was 2 miles back in the woods, and he's blaming the tweakers for it and all this, that, and the other. But yeah, I mean, it's anybody and everybody that just has the wrong state of mind in there. It's bad stuff. But I want to get out to where we're going to be going in East Texas, National Forest. I want to get out there. I want to pick a tree that I want to hunt in my southern wind spot. A dedicated tree so I know exactly where I'm bringing my climber to that spot. Also been looking at some hang-on stands and stuff, which I know you've been looking at as well. And I need to find a new northern wind spot because the other one that I hunted last year out of the climber, I really didn't like it once I got up into it. You told me about a spot a little bit further down that logging road by that giant tree the size of a Volkswagen.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean that sounds like a great spot. I have another idea too. I'd like to check them both out pre-season, but I don't want to go too late and start getting in there and pressuring the deer too early, especially if we're going to be out, opening day of bow or close to it.
yeah. I'm pretty sure. I don't know about opening day. Opening day this year, I'm pretty certain falls on a Sunday, so that seems like an awful
Yeah,
short run for both of us making a pretty significant drive. But definitely
yeah,
that first weekend, I plan to be out there with my bow in my hand and hunting from as if I can get there early enough on a Friday, hunt it Friday evening, pick my spot for Saturday and Sunday and do 2 all-day sits and not leave until 30 minutes after.
Yeah, and speaking of waiting on time and hunting pressure and stuff like that, I listened to an interview earlier today, and it was a wildlife biologist from Mississippi State University, and so this will be a good transition. So he was talking about a study that they did, and they're about to start doing another study on this, and they're going to be studying the hunting how hunting pressure affects deer, and how the deer are traveling, the how the deer are foraging, how everything about how the deer are moving. They're going to be putting GPS collars on the deer, and also tracking where the hunters are moving in and out of the stand, where they're going to be in the stand, and how they're hunting.
When the Orange Army comes out, they all go to bed.
Yeah, pretty much, pretty much. So they're going to be conducting this, and so they're in Mississippi. They get pretty good cooperation from the Wildlife Service over there. They make sure that almost every hunting club participates in some kind of, let's give stats on every deer we're killing. What's its score, what's the body weight, where was it killed, what time was it killed, all that stuff. So they're giving all kinds of stats to the Wildlife Service, and that's getting used up by the biologists for sure. But this study in particular is pretty interesting to me for a couple of aspects. One, in the past, that was a very similar study that's published on their website. They realized that what we've always suspected, it only takes 3 to 4 days for hunting pressure to start changing the activity and how far in the range that the deer are actually moving in that area. And they're tending to be sticking closer to cover. They're still moving the same amount of distance, but in a smaller range, if that makes sense. So
yeah, so basically, if a deer was taking a big giant walk around, say deer, for hypothetical, is making a 3-mile loop, he's still making a 3-mile loop, but instead of making a 3-mile loop, he's making 3 1-mile loops. Or
or let's just say, let's say that deer walks 3 miles a day. You come in, you start pressuring that deer. That deer is still going to walk 3 miles. But let's say he was doing it in 1 square mile. Now he's doing it in a square, 500-yard area.
Yeah, now he's doing it in a 1/4 mile square, or
basically his bedding area that he knows the ins and outs of and that he feels safe in, because with tracks and scent and noises that he's not used to, 8-9 months out of the year, when that starts happening, if he's not losing his brain and going crazy with the rut, he's going to pay attention to all that and definitely stick to all this cover.
Well, and that actually makes kind of perfect sense. My buddy used to have a place out there, kind of in between me and you, out there off of I-10, but it was a working ranch where people were there every single day, trucks, 4-wheelers, everything. And those deer, like, if you were more than 50, 60 yards away from them, they didn't care. You could drive by in a truck, you could stop, roll down the window, look at them through the binoculars, and they'd stare at you, but they would not run.
Yeah, tolerance in the environment is definitely like a key factor in all this. So yeah, if you're hunting a bunch of ag fields and that farmer is adamant about going and looking at his crops every day, or he's taking that dirt path right next to that open field, and the big bucks, and in the middle of winter, they're bedding down and what's left over of his fields or whatever. They're going out there grazing, trying to find some food. They're seeing him every day. They're going to run the first few times maybe, but they're going to get used to it.
They eventually get habitualized to it, and then because I know some guys that hunt, up north, Kansas, Nebraska, areas like that, and that's the way they all get into their stands. They all hunt, tree stands or climber stands or tripod stands. Usually on the edge of cut corn. But they always use the same, they come in down the farmer's road, or they walk, the paths that the farmer walks, or they drive the roads that the farmer drives.
Yeah,
And
and
a lot of them,
potentially.
well,
Go
and
ahead.
what's really funny is like a lot of them said the deer are smart. Like if you drive a truck and stop it, they
Hmm.
won't ever come out. But if you drive a truck and you slow down, get out and let that, that other truck and then that other truck circle back around, deer will
Hmm.
come out. So they get
Mm.
habitualized to that activity and they become, 100% accustomed to it and it doesn't bother them. So
Yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
because
perfect that makes
for long
perfect
enough out of the year, they're not getting a threat out of that, you know? And I think that's one thing, like, to counter or um, to kind of back up what they're saying about, the hunting pressure coming in. Somebody's driving down a county road that a lot of people, are going to hunt off of, like, let's say out the national forest. People are driving down the service, the Forest Service roads all the time during the off season.
Yeah, they're also
That's not
getting
a
shot at all the time too.
Well, there's a lot of poachers out there, man. East Texas is its own breed of some weirdos, but yeah, so they can definitely get accustomed to it. But with like a 2 month deer season out of the year, maybe I don't know exactly how long it is, but it's close to that, including bow season, maybe 3 months.
Well,
You
let's see.
know,
Well, let's see. If you count, it starts October 1st and ends.
so
Muzzleloader ends
e-
the
so four
second.
months including bow season.
Well, you got
So
muzzleloader too, which is what 2 weeks. The first 2 weeks of January.
yeah, the first 2 weeks of January.
So that's four and a half
Yeah, so you
months.
got Yeah, you got a couple of months, so but still that's only a quarter of the year. With hunting season so short, the majority of the year they're not getting that exposure. Like the farmer would be coming out and driving the roads every day,
Yeah.
where the woods are loaded up with people for 4 months and then not at all basically for the rest of the 3 quarters of the year.
Well, and even that, you stop and think about bow season. What, half to a quarter the number of people bow hunt? But I mean, I can tell you from personal experience of hunting out there as many years as I have out there in the national forest. Like after opening weekend, your chances drop dramatically of even seeing a deer. Like
Yeah,
if you're gonna
absolutely.
get a deer out there, you better be hoping it's opening weekend because after that, them deer get wised up real quick.
Yeah, you better be pushed right up to some bedding and in between some bedding and another thing of bedding because they're wanting to stay tight to that heavy cover, and yeah, definitely stay tight to all of that. But the discussion that we were having earlier about all of this was something that I had read on that study. It was talking about what got us kicked off was the lunar phases. So something that every hunter either has a belief or disbelief about is the lunar phase. This study had absolutely no proof, not to say that it doesn't happen other places, people, but this study had no proof that the deer were connected to the lunar phases at all, that it made them move any more, any less, any different times of days. They were splitting up the deer's travel time into sections of the day and like 3 hour chunks. And it did not change with the lunar cycle, but when paired with a weather cycle, yes.
Weather
And
100% affects deer.
100%, there's no question about that. Barometric pressure, wind direction, and direction that they're traveling, temperature, rain, sleet, snow, all that stuff.
And I'm kind of the opinion that I think a full moon deer tend to be more active under a full moon that is, up all night. Not a full moon that's underfoot because that happens sometimes where you have the full moon during the day.
Hmm.
But I like the point that you made earlier about that, where it's like, well, if it's a new moon, you're not going to be able to see them out there in that field unless you're shining a spotlight out there, or
Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna go shining deer, and
well, and I mean, I've gone and shown
yeah,
deer
no, you,
before
you
out
could,
there at my buddy's ranch,
yeah,
and you're right. On a moonless night, you go out there in the middle of the pasture and you light it up, and there's eyes everywhere out there, but
they're
you
just
couldn't
more
see them.
prevalent. They're just more prevalent on that new moon, and people are like, "Oh, I always see deer on the new moon. They're always moving." Then the next morning, I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah.
Well, that could be coincidence, and I guarantee you, there's a million people out there that are gonna say, "Man, I killed some of the biggest deer right after a full moon." Like there's all these misconceptions and things that maybe we're overthinking so much of it as a deer hunting community.
I'm pretty
And
certain we are.
And oh, absolutely, man. We obsess about it for so much of the year, and that just leaves so much opportunity for mistakes and misconceptions and just misinformation, really. And buying stuff that we don't need because we're bored and we want that little kick of adrenaline.
Well, you need to get
Um,
that little endorphin rush from that little
yeah, dude,
dopamine kick.
I swear I could walk into any outdoor store, not buy a single thing, and feel better than when I walked in.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if I'm having a bad day, I'm all for going and walking through Bass Pro, Cabela's Academy,
Yeah,
any place
yeah,
that's got a
absolutely.
nice sporting goods store. And I mean, just go look at the rifles, go look at the different duck calls, go look at the duck decoys, and just look, touch it, feel it.
Yeah, and so back to the lunar phase though, there's all these people that can make all these claims and back up all this stuff with hard proof that they did not kill a deer after a full moon. They, absolutely killed a deer after a new moon, and vice versa, and argue both sides all day. But this study showed absolutely no change over a 2-year period on any lunar cycle,
Well, and
that it
that's
was affecting the deer at all when not accompanied by a weather pattern, food, hunter pressure, all of these different variables that go into a study like that. When they take out most of those variables, when there's no correlation, they can say, okay, the deer didn't move.
yeah. Well, I mean, I can believe that because the past.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so I tend to almost 100% agree with this study. I haven't seen this particular study, but over the past couple of years of listening to Joe Rogan with Ranella and listening to Ranella's podcast and the Wired to Hunt podcast and a whole bunch of other podcasts and online articles and everything, is I used to really think that the moon, like you had to hunt the moon, and I tend now to think the moon isn't much of a factor other than the fact that I don't. If I had my preference, and this is probably just an old superstition that's just with me, is I still wouldn't want to hunt a weekend that has the full moon up all night, just for the sheer fact that there's that much more light, they're that much more likely. Because if they wanted to,
Yeah,
they could get up and move. So
yeah,
even though there's no scientific proof of that, that's that old lucky rabbit's foot thing. You
yeah.
know,
But back to the point of discrediting like lunar cycles and stuff like that. They're already nocturnal. They already have nocturnal movement. So at the fact that maybe a little bit of light might attract them to it, yeah, maybe they want to go feed it, at a full moon, but that doesn't stop them from being nocturnal other times of the year when there's hunting pressure making them move nocturnally.
well,
But
yeah, that's for
man,
sure. Once the Orange Army gets out there, I mean,
yeah,
they go nocturnal, guaranteed,
yeah,
100%.
yeah. But I mean, we'd have the discussion about like lunar cycles and stuff all day long. That's been going on for years and years and years. I just wanted to bring up that that's how this conversation started out originally, and then we moved into um, doe
Photo period.
genetics, the
Yeah.
photo periods, and doe genetics playing a
What
role
what
in when they
brings
come
a
into
doe
estrus.
into estrus?
Exactly.
Photo period.
So, so I'm going to disagree with you there because I heard a very strong argument earlier about it.
Photo
And
period.
so I would agree that a photo period would bring a doe into estrus originally. Originally, like very much originally. But I would say, from what I heard earlier today, and from the backings of the study that I read earlier today, on if anybody wants to check it out, it's MSU. What is it?
It's MSU Deer.
Deer Lab. MSUDeerLab.com. So if anybody wants to check it out, MSUDeerLab.com. Look at their publications, and it's down there somewhere. You can just check it out. They have all kinds of great stuff. Um, but yeah, so he was talking about in the 30s and 40s when deer were being introduced to areas with a lesser deer population after we were going through and doing market hunting and wiping out populations of stuff and lowering populations of
Yeah, the
deer.
deer repopulation. The
Hmm. Yeah, so you're pulling deer from places that didn't get as hard hit with market hunting from the U.S., like Mexico, Texas, basically Mexico
Canada,
at that point,
places like that.
Canada, Scandinavia, the far north, um, places that weren't accessed, but now in the 30s and 40s, and they can reintroduce to North Carolina, Georgia, places like that. But
Yeah, if I
so
remember right, I think Texas actually traded deer for turkey to rebuild our eastern turkey population.
I don't know that.
I,
That's
I want to
interesting though.
say I read that at some point in time. I'll have to do a little research, and next time we get together, I'll have to find the article and we'll have to mention it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, so when a deer comes into estrus, this gentleman's argument was that by bringing in a deer from Texas and a deer from Canada, those two deer are going to come into estrus at a completely different time, and they're going to follow their genetics. And the one from Canada is going to have a much, much earlier time of coming into estrus. The one from Texas is going to be a lot later in the season.
I 100% agree with that because I have a friend of mine who hunted a high fence ranch down in Texas where the either the biologist or the ranch manager or someone along those lines basically told him the exact same thing. He was like, "Hey, we have deer here that were originally from, you know, native population. Then we put up the fence, and then we supplemented our genetics with deer from up north." And he's like, "We now have almost a month solid of rut behavior because of the deer brought from up north. The different, say they brought some from Michigan, some from Kansas, and some from, Oklahoma or something along those lines. They just steadily, each week, another deer comes in."
Yeah, and to your point, so your argument was about photo period. So when the daylight changes from a shorter day period into a longer day period, correct?
Yeah, I believe that kind of like with turkeys, what sets turkeys off in the spring is whenever the days start getting to a certain amount of length. They get to a certain, time. Okay, that tells those birds it's time to build a nest and, go find them a tom and go make
Mm-hmm.
eggs. And I think it's the same thing with deer. As the days start getting shorter and shorter and shorter, you know, those deer fire off to say, okay, it's time for me to get pregnant. My gestation time is X amount of time. And in order to optimize the time when my fawn's going to drop,
Mm-hmm.
whenever there's the best chance of survival, I need to get pregnant now because historically this is the best time for me to get pregnant.
Yeah, and I think that, when we're getting into like minute stuff like that, then it's definitely going to be I'm going to come into estrus around this time generally, but when I'm having the best nutrition, when I'm having the best, chances of being able, later in the year to lactate the best, to produce the best, nutrition for my fawn when it comes out and it's nursing in the first, weeks, month, 2 months, when it's, needing all that heavy, heavy nutrition from the doe to the fawn. Yeah, that's really important on exactly what time. But that still doesn't mean that it's not passed down in the genetics for that to be earlier or later. That might be like, it might be a minute detail to say, okay, I have to do it here and there's no stopping it. But here, what's the micro stuff that I can manage?
Yeah,
Is my body going to say, okay, let's push it another couple of days because we can do that. And then that puts us that much closer to the spring. Or is it like, and if you got a deer from Texas, a doe from Texas that's passing on that genetic, it's going to be later in the year. Are we going to push it a little bit later so, you know, uh, I'm going to have enough nutrition to get me through the rest of this winter and I can have a late fawn and there will still be nutritious greens from the springtime.
yeah, I think that's why there's sometimes, people talk about a late rut or an early rut or things like that. I think that maybe other deer, that are more maybe maybe young deer come in on, strictly this one thing cause them to go, maybe weather can set them off. I honestly don't know. I'm by no means a whitetail biologist, but
Yeah.
the one thing that I can tell you is that it seems like historically, looking at my notes and stuff, it seems like the rut occurs in the areas that I hunt the same time every year, regardless of weather. You know, it might be a couple days either way, but I think what you're talking about, that genetic pass down, makes perfect sense because, you know, those deer are cued to go off at this point in time.
Yeah,
You
and
know,
I do want to clarify that the genetic pass down would only be from the mothering doe to a fawn doe.
yeah,
So
exactly.
she would only be passing that down to that doe. The other side of the genetics, all the rest of it would definitely go to a yearling buck, a fawn that's going to be a buck. But that side of the genetics, of course, the menstruating, the estrus cycle, all of that is going to be passed down to the doe, of course.
Yeah, but I mean that makes perfect sense that like deer from up north, you know, they're gonna go in, you know, earlier while there's
Hmm.
still a good chance. Deer down here in Texas, they don't have to go in till later.
Yeah, one thing I did hear about a guy who's an expert shed hunter. What he did say is affected by the photo period, the length of daylight. When that starts to change and we start to get to a certain point, right around February, and they start to get a little bit longer February, then it hits that next mark and we're starting to go back up, right?
Yeah,
After the solstice. So at that point, the bucks start to retract calcium down out of their antlers and it goes back to their skull to strengthen their skull again. And so then that causes, the antlers to shed. And another thing that I found was interesting that's not connected to that, but just a cool fact, that bucks actually go through osteoporosis when they're growing antlers. They're actually pulling calcium and phosphates from their other bones to
grow
project,
their antlers,
to
huh?
grow their antlers because they can't get enough supplement from their diet in
That
the
would
wild.
that would explain why they hit like the protein and the like mineral licks and all that stuff
Yeah,
so hard
and
when
that
they're
would
growing
also
their antlers.
yeah, that would also explain, when deer farmers or high fence places with high management and high protein and all of that, that they can get such huge abnormal Boone and Crockett type results because they're doing all this supplementing and the deer are just stronger. They're not malnutrition.
Yeah, they
They're
can.
not
They're literally growing
malnourished.
Franken deer.
Yeah, you're mutating the genetics at that point.
Well, yeah, I
You're
mean, you
literally
pick the biggest freak and you grow him with the mama that had the biggest freak, and you just keep going and going and going until you get those
yeah,
crazy looking deer.
breeding beyond beyond the point that it's even normal anymore, and that to me is not a correct way to manage.
Yeah,
That's literally, you have a skinny body deer with these 10-foot antlers that he can't even carry around, basically.
yeah. I mean, you're literally perverting nature to make, I mean, a trophy. I mean, hey, more power to you if that's what you choose to do. It's just not for me.
Yeah, as long as you still harvest the meat and eat that meat, like, okay, I'm cool with that. But yeah, man, I just thought it was a cool study. I didn't want to touch on this for too long, but I definitely wanted to just get that out there. Anybody that wants to check it out, once again, it's
MSU
MSU
Deer Lab.
deerlab.com, msudeerlab.com. So they just click on publications, top left corner of the website, and you got to go check it out. They got all kinds of stuff on there. They got something called bird's eye view of a of like deer cover or something like that. That was a really interesting read too. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely have to
yeah,
go check it out. Well,
yeah,
everyone, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Get outside, go enjoy this last bit of summer before we all get busy hunting, and
yeah.
see you next time.
All right, later.